I'm very excited about this new book. I'm excited about the author. I can hardly wait to read it myself. The title is Fake, Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. Yeah, you won't be surprised to know that the PhD who wrote this book, this skeptics book, is our dear friend Dr. Patrick Moore, one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, who deeply cares about the state of the planet, but left Greenpeace because of their junk science and political extremism. He's been a debunker of many myths since then. I'm very excited about this book because it's specifically targeted to families that hate the propaganda for the kids that they get in schools and other places. 100 color photographs, illustrations, and charts to help debunk the myths. Joining us now via Skype from British Columbia is our friend Dr. Patrick Moore. Patrick, great to see you. I am very excited about this book. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Ezra, it dawned on me not too long ago, and I've been studying the environment for over 50 years, that most of the scare stories, maybe all of them, that are bandied about in the media today to make our children and ourselves afraid of the future are all about things that are either invisible, like carbon dioxide and radiation and whatever is in a GMO that's supposed to be bad. Obviously, it's invisible because you can't see anything bad. Or remote, like polar bears and coral reefs, where the average person cannot verify or observe for themselves the truth. Therefore, we depend on the activists, the media, the politicians, and the scientists who are on serial government grants to study these things for the truth. Now, they all have huge skin in the game. Every one of those categories, activists, media, politicians, and scientists, has a stake in those stories being listened to and repeated over and over again in the media in particular. And there's money involved, billions of dollars. So how on earth is the average person going to know the truth about these things when they can't see it for themselves? And this book is all about 11 different examples, ranging from the climate change issue, of course, to coral reefs, to polar bears, to GMOs, to radiation, to forests, and to walruses falling off cliffs because of climate change, according to Sir Richard Attenborough. Covers all of these subjects and shows the reader what a sham it is, that it's absolute propaganda in most cases. The polar bear population is healthy and growing. The coral reefs are not dying. Nuclear energy is one of the safest techs we've ever invented in terms of casualties per amount of energy produced, and on and on and on. And I tell you, it's an eye-opener, and it really will help because it's written in plain English for anyone from grade 9 who has any interest in science, and up to grade 12, where you don't even need an interest in science because it's written for people who can read normal English. And I sure hope this book gets around.
Well, I am completely convinced. I know you over the years, your presentations. I remember in the before times, before the pandemic stopped us from living our lives, you were a guest speaker on a Rebel News cruise. And I had the pleasure of watching your presentations. And you have a special knack of having a mastery of science. I mean, you have a PhD, but you can speak in a plain English that is not only accessible, but very persuasive. I'm very excited about this. I'm absolutely going to get a copy of the book, not just for myself, but for my kids, because I'm worried that just passively, just by absorbing the propaganda that comes from the world, from pop culture, from the media, and their schools, they are probably going to, if I don't intervene, believe the 11 myths you referred to. How could they not? Because, for example, the polar bear example you say, it is so widely reported that polar bears are almost extinct. The polar bear was chosen as, the symbol for global warming alarmism, but the facts are the exact opposite. So unless someone's there to debunk it, just by default, I think people will be in a state of fear.
That's true, Ezra. And the book is available on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com as a Kindle now, as an ebook. We're in a pre-sale phase, but the paperback will come out about February 2 or February 3, so you can watch for that. But the Kindle book is under $10, so or maybe it is pegged at exactly $10 Canadian. It's under $10 US. And I tell you, it is an amazing thing to realize that they have used invisible and remote things where the average person can't see it for themselves to make all these scare stories. Just the example of GMOs, for example. What is it in the GMO that is bad for you? Well, first, it must be invisible because you can't see it. Second, it has no name. And third, it has no chemical formula. Everything has a chemical formula. Therefore, it does not exist. It's a simple logic. And yet people are afraid of GMOs because they've been called Frankenstein and they've been called Terminator and they've been given all these ugly names. It's sort of like dirty oil. You know, like oil isn't dirty. And neither, and of course, dirt is dirty, and that's where we grow all our food. Yeah. When they say dirty oil, they don't have it. It's not talking about dirt. They're talking about dirty as in dirty little scoundrel. In other words, it's a swear word in that sense. That's what propaganda is all about, is associating things you don't like with nasty words like dirty.
Right. You're so right. That's why, you know, I remember when I wrote my book, Ethical Oil, over a decade ago now, there was such a freak out on the left because you're not allowed to associate oil or anything industrial with a good word, let alone ethical. They were apoplexy. That title alone sent the left into apoplexy. You mentioned coral reefs, you mentioned nuclear power, GMOs, climate change. Tell me some of the other threats of doom that you criticize or inspect in the book.
Well, one of them is polar bears, of course. Let me just go back to that because I want to elaborate on that because it's a real Canadian issue. We have more polar bears than any other country. The Inuit who live in Nunavut and have their capital at Iqaluit on Baffin Island have a government. And that government is created by Canada, and it's a legitimate government for those people who live where there are no trees in the north because it's so cold there. And they have created a polar bear management plan. It's been a long process. The reason they are creating a polar bear management plan is because there are too many polar bears and they are killing people in their villages in the winter. So that's a big news, you'd think, that they have done that. And it's because there's so many bears. They have gone from 6,000 to 10,000 40 years ago, 45 years ago, to 35,000 or so today. And that is a fact. And yet they still say they're going extinct by 2050 or 2100, which is a crock. They're doing very, very well. They're fat and happy. And the conditions in the Arctic right now are very good for them. When they passed that management plan in Iqaluit, only one newspaper in Canada reported on it, and that was a newspaper in Nunavut at Cambridge Bay where there's 1,200 people to read it. Well, actually, most of them are kids probably. So there's not many people read the story. And Canada said that the Inuit interpretation of polar bears is not about real evidence. They question the evidence that the Inuit have. Well, the Inuit live there year-round. These scientists go up for 2 weeks and take a look and come back and tell us the polar bears are going extinct, where the Inuit live there all their lives and have been living there for 2,000 or 3,000 years, so they've seen a polar bear or two in their time. And yet no media down in Canada here reported on this fact. It's all just gone silent because it's kind of embarrassing, I guess, that the polar bears aren't going extinct. You'd think people would be raising flags to the top of the mast and singing in order to be celebrating the large number of polar bears we have now. But no, pessimism must reign, you know. And that's the trouble with the environmental movement, is it's all dark and horrible and nothing is good. And that's not true. This is a beautiful world. The greening of the earth caused by the increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a fact. It is not a fact that carbon dioxide is causing the earth to warm, especially not to warm too much, like as if it's going to be too hot for life in 10 years. This is not true. None of these scare stories, doomsday myths, are real. They are fake, and they are mostly invisible.
Well said. Well, I can hardly wait to get a copy of the book for myself and my kids. We will send this video out to our viewers, Dr. Moore, because we love to hear the other side of the story. And in the environmental catastrophe business, you only get the doom side of the story. The book, again, is called Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. We'll have a link to the Amazon pages under this video. Dr. Moore, great to see you. Thanks for taking the time with us today.
Thanks for helping publicize my book, Ezra.
Right on, my pleasure. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.